Hi, this is the nature versus nurture tobacco experiment. So in the type of tobacco plant, there are two phenotypes, green or yellow, also known as albino. And the gene for color codes for the production of chlorophyll, which makes the plant green. Uh, the allele for producing chlorophyll, or the green color, is dominant, while albino is recessive. What we're interested in finding out is if this gene can be impacted by the environment. So I want you to think to yourself, what factors could influence plant color? Pause and unpause when you're ready to discuss. So there's a long list of things we can look at: the amount of water, anything about the soil, pH of the soil, temperature. But in this experiment, we're going to look at the amount of light and whether that impacts the gene for producing chlorophyll. So in a nutshell, what we're going to do in our experiment is we're going to take our tobacco seeds and we're going to put them in three different chambers. And we have our light box that's completely transparent. Then we have our intermediate box, which is opaque on the top, so it's going to prevent light from coming from the top, but it's transparent on the sides to let in sunlight. So that's the intermediate amount of light. And then we have a completely opaque box, which will produce a dark environment. So we're going to put our seeds on we're going to put filter paper into the chambers, put our seeds on the filter paper, and then each day we're going to moisten the filter paper with water using a pipette. So some information about the parents. The parents that produced the, the, the seeds are heterozygous. So what I would like you to do is create the Punnett square and come up with a prediction for what percent of the offspring should be green and what percent should be albino, assuming only genetic influences. Once you create the Punnett square and come up with your predictions, then unpause the video. So if only genes determine the color and we had two heterozygous plants, you can see the Punnett square here. And so we expect 75% of the plants to be green and 25% to be albino. And if this were only genetic, then every single environment, whether it's in the light or the dark, we should expect the same percentages, right? The Punnett square should successfully predict the phenotype percentages of the plants. So if we're in the light, it should be 75% green, 25% albino. And if it's in the dark, it should be 75% green, 25% albino. So we're going to test if this is correct. Now, let's look at some sample data. How would you interpret this data? So you have the plants in the light and plants in the dark, and you see the percentage of the phenotypes. So what I'm asking you is, does the environment impact the color of the plant, or is the color purely genetically determined? So completely, is it nature or nature and nurture? Pause the video, think about it, unpause when you're ready to discuss. So you can clearly see here that the environment does have an impact on the color. So you can see in the dark we have far fewer green plants than what we expected from the Punnett squares, and we have far more albino plants than what we expected based on the Punnett square. Now how about this data? How would you interpret this data? Pause and unpause when you're ready to discuss. See here, it's not very clear because there is a difference from what we expected in the two environments. But the question is this a significant difference? And so I can't answer this question. So what could we do to find out if there is a significant difference between the dark and the light plants? So pause, unpause when you're ready to discuss. And if you said using a chi-square, you are definitely correct. So for this experiment, we're going to use a chi-square analysis where we're going to count the number of green and albino plants in each environment. In this image, we've only been looking at light and dark, but don't forget there will be an intermediate environment. And we're going to see, do we get this 75-25 percentage breakdown in the light, intermediate, and in the dark? And if we get those percentages non-significantly different than those percentages, I should say, then we can safely conclude that the environment has no impact on the color of the plants. And so that would be purely nature or purely genetic. But then if we start to see significant differences aligned to the environment, then we say, you know what, the environment does appear to have an impact on plant color. So there is some nurture involved in the color of the tobacco plant. So we take a look at the actual lab itself. Here's the handout. Now there is a procedure here and some of the tables. You can feel free to use these tables to record your data, to perform calculations, or just scrolling through these. You can see those chi-square tables for each environment as well. Some other tables. You will write a complete lab report for this experiment. Again, don't forget that there are more than just tables in the results of a lab report. Make sure you check the lab report the webpage for more information. And just like the fruit fly lab, you do have access to last year's data in order to write your lab report, so you don't have to. There's a link to this spreadsheet on the assignment sheet. You don't have to wait for your plants to grow in order to write your lab report. So what you will do, though, is that once you have your data, you're going to work in triplets. And once you have your data, you can submit that to the Google form, again, linked on the assignment sheet, for next year's class. So hopefully you have a good understanding of the lab. Thank you.